We currently manage millions of acres of agricultural land as if it were a sprawling industrial machine designed for maximum extraction. This command and control approach relies on chemical inputs and rigid calendars. It attempts to force local ecologies into predictable, uniform schedules. Stripping away plant cover leaves the ground bare and unprotected. Without roots to hold it, topsoil simply washes away, taking the land's natural water-holding capacity. Treating the soil as a dead substrate rather than a living ecosystem has engineered massive vulnerability into our food supply. A complex living organism cannot be managed like a predictable factory floor. When we force it to behave like one, the land breaks. In discussions about land degradation and climate change, cattle usually take the blame for emitting methane and chewing fragile grasslands into deserts. Ecological outcomes are determined by the management strategy rather than the species being managed. In regenerative agriculture, livestock act as biological tools. By grazing in highly specific patterns, they trigger landscape-scale healing. Repairing these ecosystems doesn't require removing the animals entirely. It requires changing the human decision-making behind their movement. For millions of years, wild grasslands thrived alongside massive herds of ruminants. Predators kept these herds tightly packed and constantly moving to new ground. Today, land managers use holistic planned grazing. By using movable electric fencing to group livestock tightly and move them frequently, they replicate that ancient predator-prey dynamic on a domestic scale. When cattle are concentrated for a short time, their hooves break soil crusts and pulse organic matter into the ground, feeding the microbiome. After moving on, a long recovery period allows native grasses to grow deep roots, locking carbon underground. By reverse engineering nature's ancient blueprints, livestock transition from destructive grazers into biological engines for soil creation. When land is degraded and bare, rainwater hits the surface and instantly runs right off. This worsens the destruction of heavy floods and leaves the landscape parched when the rain stops. To intercept that runoff, managers dig permaculture swales, shallow trenches built perfectly level across a hillside. Instead of rushing away, water hits the trench, spreads out, and sinks down into the ground. This stored groundwater passively irrigates deep-rooted pastures for months, completely eliminating the need for expensive, fossil fuel-intensive pumping systems. Repairing the soil's natural sponge effect captures rainfall right where it lands, turning an erosive threat into a free, localized resource. But applying heavy grazing uniformly across an entire property can backfire, wiping out local plant diversity and homogenizing the landscape. Because ecosystems are complex and constantly shifting, ranchers rely on adaptive management. They monitor the land daily instead of following a fixed schedule. This grid outlines the many specific conservation practices a manager has to choose from. By evaluating grass recovery rates, weather forecasts, and soil health indicators, they decide exactly when to move the herd and when to destock completely. We cannot dictate the behavior of the ecosystem. True agricultural wisdom lies in the humility to react to its subtle signals. When a manager stops treating symptoms and focuses on the health of the soil surface, the ecosystem's recovery starts to change the economics of the entire operation. Eliminating the need for expensive chemicals reduces financial stress, while a reliance on community learning builds a sense of purpose, often lost in industrial models. This diagram illustrates how healthy above-ground biomass translates directly to below-ground soil carbon. For many managers, carbon storage is an incidental result of building a healthy farm, rather than the primary goal. Drawing carbon down into the soil is a direct productivity strategy. It grows more forage, holds more water, and supports a more resilient livelihood. Ultimately, synchronizing with these ancient, deeply rooted biological rhythms turns the ranch into a powerful engine for landscape renewal.